Very good. So perhaps already the panelists can come to the stage, and I'll introduce you afterwards. I think you know, but let me call you. Morena, David, to me, you're already almost here. And Sufang, please. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, maybe Sufang, you can put here. David, thanks. Morena. It's fine. Well, my name is Claudia Aguirre. As I was already introduced, I'm the program director at GIZ South Africa, SAVax. And we thank you all for joining us today. The first panel is titled Building Regulatory and Technical Excellence, Biovac's Pathway to WHO Prequalification. Before I introduce our guests, I'd like to frame a little bit this discussion. So our program, co-funded by the European Union and the German government, partners with Biovac since last year. And we support Biovac first to achieve the WHO prequalification, but also in defining commercial and regulatory pathways for the oral cholera vaccine. And we partner very strongly as well with SAPRA already since 2022 to achieve maturity level 4 and also to become a listed authority. So we thought it was very good timing to showcase the progress, both in terms of industry, but also in terms of regulation in the country, and showcase what South Africa is capable of. I'll introduce you panelists very briefly. Please apologize, I'm not going to read your very long CVs. We will share short bios, but they all have very amazing careers. Starting with Dr. Morena Mokoana, welcome, Biovac's CEO. Hello. We have David Wu. He's a technical officer at WHO in Geneva in the unit for product policies, access and manufacturing. Dr. Boitumelo Semetes, the CEO at SAPRA, and Dr. Sufang Guo, who is the Chief of Health and Nutrition at UNICEF in South Africa. Thank you very much to all of you. You will be receiving micros if you don't have yet right now, so that you can also contribute. And the structure of this panel will be, I'll pose 2 questions to each of you, and then we'll collect questions from the audience, okay? Morena, do you have a mic? Yeah. Excellent. So we'll start with you, please. Morena, can you tell us a little bit how is Biovac positioning itself to be commercially sustainable in the national, in the regional, and in the global market, please?
Thanks, Claudia, and thanks to all the partners that have already been listed. I think you see the logos. But also, I'd just like to acknowledge that, you know, it's amazing. When you talk about the ecosystem, if I just look in the room, this is the ecosystem. And unfortunately, we can't name all the partners that are here. But this is what we call about the ecosystem when we talk about partners that help us with skills, funding, infrastructure, technology. Just about everybody is in this room. So I just wanted to capture this room, that this is what we call the ecosystem. Claudia, you know, I think Biovac, and thanks for the kind words that we've heard. You know, one feels that it's an adolescent that's maybe getting into adulthood. So I think even the Ambassador spoke about the support from 2010. We have our partners, Sanofi and Pfizer, that I've seen that were supporting us then when we were still babies. And now we're getting into this adolescent stage where we're now even talking about pre-qualification, which is a language that Biovac always dreamt of having. And now at least it's a little bit, you know, it's dawning. So it's this ecosystem that's really helping us in terms of trying to get to this. But again, we need to grow, we need to be adults. But like then you need parents, you need uncles, you need the community to help you, which is why you are all here and which is why we are very thankful. I also want to say that, I mean, we're here as Biovac and we're talking here as South Africa, but I think we really want us to be a representative of the country, but also want to be a representative of the continent. And we're here to execute, but we'll execute here on behalf of the rest. Yeah, so just with that, it's been a long road, and it's going to be a long road. And so by us being adolescent means that we still need the support going forward in terms of this. And there's sort of like 4 chapters in terms of where we are continuously looking at. So first is tech transfers. That's sort of the first chapter that we are in. And you need partners in terms of getting to us, in terms of technology transfers. Now, on that, there are 2 parts. There are partners that you can get, and we've worked with many in terms of full finish, but we also have partners that have given us seed technology, like IVI, which I want to acknowledge are in the room, and that's where the cholera vaccine becomes important. You then move on to the regulatory space, which is the second chapter. Now, the second chapter has 2 angles. There's one of preparation, and that's where the WHO, the LPA team has come. And then you get to my friend Tumi there, who has to be the regulator, has to do her job. And that also leads us to pre-qualification. Then there's a market shaping element. And that's where the likes of Gavi and AVMA are quite important, so that all those things that we do is important. And lastly, it's about market penetration. And that's where we need to get, and market penetration has 2 points. There's a local penetration because we need local support, but you also have international market penetration. And that's where the UNICEF tenders are also going to be quite important, so that the ecosystem is there throughout. So there's a lot that I really want to download, but obviously I don't have the time. But I just wanted to say that, firstly, where are we? We need all the partners, but there are all sorts of various partners around the 4 chapters that I'm talking about, and I'm very happy to come back to those when we have more time.
Thank you very much. So what would be 3 success factors that you would need to get fixed in the ecosystem, perhaps by other stakeholders, for you to be in 10 years' time fully sustainable?
Yeah. So I think, if you look at, as I say, in this adolescent mode, we are at this cusp of now getting to be a little bit more adulthood. So firstly, we have the people, most of them are in Cape Town, 350 people that are really doing the excellent work. I'm just a representative of them, but we really need to make sure that we preserve the skills that we have, and in our expansion that we do get the skills, and that is a key critical pillar. Part of the regulatory interaction, and David has had 2-week exposure to Biovac, to actually the people that actually do. I mean, that for me is a key pillar, that the skill side needs to be preserved. I think there's a second part that really talks to the broader ecosystem, that, you can talk about funding, it's always important. And the funding is upstream funding in terms of grant funding, but also the downstream side, where it needs to support our expansion and manufacture, because we want to be competitive. We really want to make sure that we are large scale and we do Africa proud. And then there is the third part, which is a blend of what I say is about regulatory and penetration. And maybe Minister, because I know that at some point you'll be leaving, but I just wanted to leave you with this note around the regulatory and where we are going, in that whilst the oral cholera vaccine, we're looking at 2029, as you said, the timeline is because it's an end-to-end development. It has to undergo even clinical trials, which is the first that, as a South African company, we are doing, hence the time. But Minister, let me give you hope in that there is another project on injectable polio vaccine, where we got the technology from Sanofi, which would be sooner than that, around 2027, depending on what my colleague here at SAPRA is going to be able to facilitate. So we're hoping that the pre-qualification would be sooner than that. So the regulatory and the commercial part is quite important as a third pillar, Claudia. So those 3 really need to, and they all interact, and they really need to happen now. They need to happen together, but they can only happen with the support of others.
Thank you very much. I think that's very clear. Thanks. David, over to you and WHO. You've been leading the team that has started the support to Biovac to achieve the pre-qualification. Can you tell us a little bit more how that support looks like? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to be here. Of course, under the leadership of Dr. Dong for this PQ Specialized Technical Assistance, I was there on site with the team to work with Biovac on their journey for pre-qualification. And not to, as much as I would like to share, there is confidentiality, so I'm not able to share full details. But what I can provide is that for the PQ Specialized Technical Assistance, it's very tailored to the manufacturer. So depending on which area that they require support towards the pre-qualification journey, the unit will provide the assistance. So in broad categories of the areas of support could include GMP, and in the area of GMP, it could be development of CAPAs, it could be mock inspections prior to WHO pre-qualification inspections. It could be reviewing of the documents, reviewing of SOPs. There's also the area related to the product in itself, what we like to call CMC, CTD. CMC is the chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. So this is all the product-related issues, specifications, formulation development, in-process controls. Related to that is how it's being translated into the vaccine dossier that's being submitted to WHO, but also it can translate into submissions towards national regulatory authorities due to similarities and harmonizations to a degree of the formatting of the CTD. So there's help in reviewing the dossier to identify gaps, to help the manufacturer understand the requirements to put into the dossier so it becomes a much more complete, a higher quality dossier to facilitate the review done by the National Regulatory Authority or by the pre-qualification unit. But there's also additional assistance. It could be related to the clinical aspects, related to stability protocols, and so forth. It's very tailored in that respect.
Thank you very much. While maintaining the confidentiality, which of course we appreciate, I think we have a more clear understanding of how preparing for PQ looks like, and also the difficulty of having two regulatory processes that are similar but not exactly the same, right? David, it was mentioned before, WHO, like other UN agencies and in general, the sector is downsizing due to budget being reduced. How is WHO planning to be able to maintain the capacity to deliver towards the WHO pre-qualification mandate? And these are two questions in one. And what do you think could be done perhaps also to fast track, as the minister was mentioning, to fast track this whole process and African manufacturers accessing the market perhaps a bit faster?
Well, it's very interesting questions indeed. But for the first question, certainly it would be, perhaps I can sum it up with one area, which for me, I believe is quite critical, and Dr. Marina has mentioned it, is the people, the people in the manufacturing facility. In fact, the 2 weeks that I had with Biovac was very enlightening. I can see the dedication and commitment by his staff to move in this journey, to really aim for WHO pre-qualification. They're very technically knowledgeable, and in fact, they did give us a run for our money. This is how technically knowledgeable they are. But we like it this way because it facilitates the exchange and it helps them grow. And indeed, there's a need for capacity building, the need for skilled workforce in the industry in itself. As the industry expands and grows, you need the people to be able to work these jobs, but have the skills to work the jobs. So with now the unit under Dr. Dong is a secretariat for an initiative called the Biomanufacturing Workforce Training Initiative. It is an initiative that has 3 pillars that provides a network and synergistic support to manufacturers on building these skills to be able to build the number of skilled workforce in countries. And of course, one of the areas is the virtual CGP training marathon on GMP, the Week of Quality for Quality. But there are other pillars as well. There's one is the Global Training Hub for Biomanufacturing hosted by the Republic of Korea, and then the establishment of regional training centers to provide more tailored, needs-based training for the countries within the region that is specific to their needs.
And on the second question, do you think there is something that could be fast-tracked or accelerated to enable African manufacturers to access the market a bit faster?
I think with pre-qualification, there is the mechanism, the collaborative registration procedure, which accelerates the market authorization and the WHO pre-qualification because it's a reliance of WHO pre-qualification assessments for manufacturers to register their vaccines in other countries, for those countries that are part of this. So this would be one way to facilitate, to fast track into other markets.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I think this builds very nice on the discussion following with Tumi from SAPRA. To me, we have a lot of discussions on SAPRA's role in facilitating this whole agenda. Can you tell us a little bit how is SAPRA working on this enabling environment for local manufacturing, while of course maintaining safety and quality standards, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia, and thank you for having SAPRA at this event today. One of the things that we're quite intentional about as a regulator there's actually two things. The first is that we want to be available for these types of engagements because the regulator is part of the national system. So we're intentional about being accessible. The second point that we're intentional about is about being an enabler. I think we don't have, as a continent, the luxury of the regulator only being the police. With all the developments that are taking place, we have to ensure that we are part of the journey with the manufacturers. Not an easy thing to do because at the end of the day, we have to police, but we are working around how do we engage and enable companies like Biovac, like Affigen, like Aspen, because we understand the changes that are going on in the sector. But in essence, for us as a regulator, we guard our scientific rigor jealously. I think this is being able to make science-based and evidence-based decisions is something that is core to how we work. But to be able to do that, you need a very strong regulatory system. So there's three elements that are quite key to this. The first is around a strong regulatory system. It's around also having the capacity and the capability to execute your role, but also collaboration. If I could talk to these from a regulatory systems perspective, as I said, what we've done is we've published a policy around supporting local manufacturers. And this is a policy that we engaged with DTIC, with DSI and the Department of Health on, because again, we recognize that if the regulator is not flexible around supporting the local industry, we will be sitting with some of the delays that I mentioned. So not perfect at this point, but at least we have that policy that was approved by our board. The second point is that, again, ours is to ensure that we have a strong enough regulatory system so that there is confidence on the products that are manufactured in our country. We want to ensure that when our pharmaceutical industry exports products, there's never a question or a doubt around the quality, the safety, and the efficacy of that. And I think over the many years, even with our predecessor, the MCC, this is something that we've been able to do quite well. And as I say, we guard it jealously. The second point is around capacity. We acknowledge that there's a lot of growth taking place on the continent and in the country, and a lot that's taking place from an innovation perspective. So there's two things we require. First is capacity. We currently, Dr. Don, have the WHO assessors busy assessing us for GBT for medicines. And one thing that constantly comes up is that for the size of the population in South Africa, the regulator is not adequately capacitated. And this remains to be a challenge, and it affects our efficiency and our effectiveness. So this is an effort, this is something that we need to make sure that we address. The second is the skill sets, the capability. And I think as much as industry needs to have the relevant skill sets for the tech transfer, for the manufacturing, similarly, the regulator must have that. There's new technologies that are being brought on board, not only for medicines, but as well as diagnostics. We're seeing AI being integral in some of the devices. So we must ensure that we've got the requisite skills to be able to support that. So there's a lot taking place around building the regulator's capacity. And a number of partners that we're seeing today, including yourselves, have really been generous in supporting us on this journey. The last point of what it is that we do in our role speaks to collaboration. We cannot, as a regulator, operate in silos. As heartbreaking as COVID was, one of the benefits was that it brought us African regulators a lot closer together. There's a lot we're doing around harmonization, so that when a company like Biovac submits an application, they don't have to submit their dossier to 55 member states. We now have AMA that's been established, the DG has been appointed, and last week she had clearly articulated what her vision is. And South Africa plays a critical role in AMA being operational. So our intention as we collaborate with others is that we want to contribute to the continental agenda of strengthening the regulator, but also ensure that we support AMA such that a company like Biovac, when they then have the OCV ready, they don't have to go to 55 member states. They go to AMA. Once AMA lists it, the rest of the countries will adopt it. We've already demonstrated that. We've got about 12 products that we've listed under AMA-RAGE, and these are being adopted by the countries in record time. So collaboration is key on the continent level. But also we acknowledge that the continent can work in silos. We collaborate quite well. Ambassador, I must say also even with the EU, through leveraging the EU M4O mechanism, we were able to evaluate lenacapavir, the HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis, in 9 months. I mean, the manufacturers know this is record time for us as a regulator. And we want to do more of this, particularly for those priority products. And the European Medicine Agency has committed to supporting us on this. We're also having discussions about drugs for tuberculosis, vaccines for tuberculosis. And so we understand that for us to even be at the table, to be in part of these collaborative reviews, you must make sure that you've got a strong regulatory system. Hence, getting ML3 and hopefully in future WLA is of utmost importance for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tumi. What do you think are currently the main challenges for South Africa's manufacturers to access the market? And what is, I mean, you already mentioned some of the work you're doing, particularly on harmonization, but how is SAPRA contributing to solve some of these challenges?
Thank you for that question, and one we've already alluded to. I think for as long as you have regulators that are not adequately capacitated, we will constantly be sitting with longer timeframes, and we know we want to address that. So that's one of the challenges, that at a national level, there may be instances where there's delays. But also in addition, as indicated earlier, if a manufacturer is targeting procurement via Gavi or Global Fund, they then need WHO PQ. So you can imagine we've authorized OCV now for clinical trials. When we now have the data and the team tables that with us in a dossier that you would have supported them on, it will probably take about 2-3 years for them to get a SAPRA authorization. If then after that they have to go to WHO PQ, it's another 2-3 years. So you can imagine the amount of time that a manufacturer then has to spend in this regulatory pathway. So in the discussions we've had with the WHO, it's around piloting a parallel evaluation. WHO needs to maintain its autonomy. They make their own decisions, and similarly with us. And so the intention is that, let's take the OCV example, Biovac will submit to SAPRA, but instead of waiting for a SAPRA authorization, which is the current WHO requirement, they will submit to SAPRA and to WHO, and we do a parallel. So very early days, it's a pilot. We are in discussions, and we're now at a point where we can firm up the operations a lot more. We will be engaging actually with all the industry players that are manufacturing vaccines, because I think we've now come to a point where there's a level of alignment on how we do this. And this is game-changing, right? Because you can imagine for an institution such as WHO, where they've got very clear processes, they ensure that member states maintain their autonomy. For them to even pilot this, it shows the commitment of WHO to this agenda of local manufacturing. And then the last point for us, what could help, and it's great that we're ML3, but I always say the benefits aren't accruing to industry in a way. There's confidence in the products that come from our country, but really the game changer is when a regulator is a WHO listed authority. Because when you're a WHO listed authority, what it means is that WHO and others can rely on your assessment. So if instead of WHO through a PQ process taking 2-3 years, when a product, if SAPRA is WLA, when a product has a SAPRA authorization, WHO will rely on that. So it will take a matter of months. And not only WHO, but other countries. So this is what we're working towards. It's a massive ambition for us, and we thank our partners for believing in us and walking this journey with us. But we believe that for the country and for the continent, this is something that SAPRA needs to work towards.
Thank you very much, Tumi. And just a detail, by when do you expect to achieve the listed authority?
You never ask the regulator about timeframes. We'll say it depends. So our intention, as I say, we've got a bit of support, is that by 2028, we could say to WHO, please come and assess us for WLA. I've put it up there.
Thank you.
Put it.
Thank you very much. Sufang, UNICEF is a large procurer, probably the largest, definitely on the African continent. And so your institution has a very good overview of demand trends and demand projections. Can you tell us a little bit, how does it look like for the oral cholera vaccine? How will the demand be in the next few years, and what does that mean in terms of business opportunities for a company like Biovac?
Thank you for having UNICEF in the discussions. So I'm answering your questions from 3 aspects. First is vaccine financing. So this one is a bit tricky as the Gavi recalibration hasn't been finalized yet. With Gavi missing $3 billion to fulfill the projected vaccine demand in the next 5 years. So some vaccine program will be subjected to reduce the financing. So at this point, based on our assumption, is the OCV is the one that going to reduce the financing. So of course the demand, the needs and the requirement from the country, especially from African continent, continually to be high, but the funding to meet those needs is likely to reduce. So that's the vaccine financing part. Secondly, regarding the vaccine demand side, so OCV demand remain very highly unpredictable and volatile due to the requirement of the outbreak response. So the persistent demand uncertainty, which has a negatively impact on manufacturers' confidence in OCV market. For the following several years, the sustainability of the OCV market will be highly dependent on the improving the demand predictability and the committed fund financing. the high demand, the uncertainty, and the validity anticipated in the coming years as a result of Gavi recalibration exercise. So co-financing requirement from the country has introduced for preventive campaigns. So if increase the implementation of planned preventive
vaccine campaigns, then the demand validity will likely reduced. So that's the from demand side. And from the supply side, currently there are 2 suppliers for the OCV vaccines, and we know of 4 suppliers, including Biovac, that are pursuing the market interest. So what they predicted is from 2036 or 2027, there are enough manufacturing capacities to meet the needs or to fulfill the demand from the UNICEF side. So to summarize, the vaccine financing for OCVA is likely to be reduced. Demand and predictability will be continued, but the manufacturing capacity is sufficient. Over.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and we see the complexities of a very unpredictable market. Sufang, as a main procurer, as a big procurer, what needs to be in place for UNICEF to procure from South African manufacturers, for example? What are your requirements?
Okay, first, the vaccine should be PQ'd, WHO PQ'd for sure. And also the offered vaccine should be in demand from the country and specific to the offered presentation and the formulation. And supplier should also registered in the United Nations global market, so ungm.org. But you see, from UNICEF side, we are not suggesting the supplier to wait for the WHO PQs. What we encourage the supplier to provide a proposal against the UNICEF vaccine tenders, even before the vaccine obtained WHO PQs, because when you submit the tenders, UNICEF will assess the financial situations of the supplier, and during the process, the supplier will improve their financial performance and ready for UNICEF to procure.
Thank you. That's good advice, I guess. Very good. We still have 5 minutes, so I'd like to take some questions from the audience, if there are any, and of course, colleagues, if you want to ask each other any question, please do. Yes, Prof. Nikes from IVI.
No, excellent question. Thanks so much. Really refreshing to be here. My only question is on the impact of the Gavi replenishment on the cholera supply. And then the second, we have not talked about the community, the role of the community in driving demand here. So we're still very technical, but we need to go to the grassroots here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps the first question can go to Morena and the second to Sufang, if you agree. Yeah.
Thanks, Nikes. As much as I'm not... Thanks, Nikes, for that question. As much as I can't answer for Gavi, but the Gavi 6.0 and the fact that Gavi didn't get to the required amount, for us as African vaccine manufacturer, it worried us to what extent will AVMA, which was really created for African vaccine manufacturers, would be impacted. So we had a bit of a panic. I think we're still panicking a little bit, but we've been assured that AVMA won't be impacted. But there will obviously be impact on the demand side, or in terms of how the countries are going to be. So as much as we believe Gavi is having lots of discussions, but it's something that we are really keeping close, because as we sign deals, as we get funding, as we get support, it was made on a particular premise. And so, will that be changing in this landscape? We're not sure, but it's certainly an important question for us to keep on tracking.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. From the UNICEF side, what we are doing is based on our projections and based on the demand financing. So of course, procurement, there's also other channels. The procurement from UNICEF's takens is a large amount coming from the Gavi side. That's why you see we are projecting the Gavi fundings. So yeah, that's what I say.
Thank you. Maybe Rachel from CSIR. Yeah. Let's take 2 more questions at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My question goes to Morena and Tumi about the role of the broader ecosystem in making sure that we support these aspirations towards local manufacturing and stronger local regulation. Thanks.
Do you want me to start? Yeah? Thank you. I mean, the ecosystem is quite important for us. I mean, I'll make reference to the CSR and the training program that they have under the AU for manufacturers. So we acknowledge that even as we recruit people into the regulator, some of them have not been in a manufacturing facility. They may be pharmacists, but we need to expose them to a manufacturing environment. For many of us, mRNA was a new technology. We needed to expose our team. So for me, there's an important role of saying along the ecosystem, how do we ensure that we create that capacity? We were talking with Claudina at DSI around CAR T cells. We need training around that. So it is, for me, it's national capacity and not only local capacity. The additional point is around compliance. You know, we need to work because we can't be a referee and a player. And if we can partner with institutions to train others on, because it's not easy for a manufacturer who's not had to put together a full dossier to do so. You know, David will speak to that. So if we can have interventions like what David has at a continent level where we don't always have to send our team overseas. So if there are institutions that can help us build that know-how, that capacity of how do you put together a dossier, what are the kind of things that will be required? Because if we get good quality dossier, it makes our life easy as regulators. So just briefly, those are the 2 I have in mind.
I have nothing further to add except the fact that it's a very important question, Rachel. I think what we are doing as Biovac, what you are doing as CSR, what Aspen is doing, what Afrigen is doing, and other parts beyond even vaccines, what each one of us are doing, because I think we're all doing new things. You know, if you talk to Petro, she'll tell you about something that's completely new that hasn't been done in the country. We can also have a story. I think Aspen has a story, and all of us have a story. I mean, the intervention with LPA is new. So I think as we, create new boundaries and create an ecosystem, I think we need to capture what is working, and obviously we still need more, and really make sure that this conversation doesn't end today. And that by the time we sit here in 3 years' time, we can have a look at how that ecosystem that you're asking about is even better, with new interventions. But we all need each other in that respect.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the committed audience. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but we will have an opportunity to mingle later and talk to each other. To wrap up, my perception of this discussion is lots of capacities already, lots of investments, lots of support, and still some challenges in a very unpredictable market. So ensuring demand is difficult, but very much needed. Thank you, colleagues. And thank you to the audience too.